Yo, Gazmas here with another Grand Archive video. So it's your birthday and you're sitting on your couch with your brand new Dawn of Ashes starter kit, deciding on which one you want to play. When suddenly some 7-foot homeless looking bloke kicks your door down and tells you, insert name, you're a wizard. But you, like any normal person, have only been playing Warrior. Well, that's okay, because I've got you with this guide. We'll go over all the cards in the deck, plus some cards to swap in and out, along with the playstyle of the deck and some narrated gameplay. Okay, let's get stuck into this deck. So this Rye list is playing Fire, and the win con is specifically built around the level 3 ability, but more on that later. Level 1 Rye is pretty easy to understand, as it has a one-time on enter effect of 2 enlightenment counters, which at level 2 equates to 1 card draw after your first mage action. Level 2 Rye's ability is that whenever you play your first spell per turn, you get a counter. Yes, that includes your opponent's turn, so it's beneficial to play fast spells on your opponent's turns to get the extra counters. Also, the good thing about this ability is it carries over to level 3. The level 3 Rye reads, for every arcane spell card in your banishment, you gain 1 level, which is super important in terms of your win con and kind of guides you on what cards you look to banish as you level up. Okay, the Regale you get in this deck is kinda garbage, but it's a starter deck, so that's to be expected. The Enduro Scepter removes a counter for 1 ping of damage, but seeing as we can use 3 to gain a card, you need to make the decision, is 3 damage worth more than a card? I'll save you the trouble, no, drawing the card is always better. Life Essence Amulet is a pretty good if you have an ally in hand you want to play, as it's either going to draw you a card or preserve the ally, as your opponent is trying to deny you this card draw. Mana Limiter is good late game, when you can easily get 6 counters by playing a single card, but please do not bring this out unless you can 100% trigger it. Surveillance Stone. If you can trigger this, you're likely losing the game by a significant margin, and that card draw ain't going to turn the tides. Never play this. Arcanus Prisms is regular mulligans, but be careful when you bring this out, as you lose all cards in your memory, as you materialize before you recollect. But this item is great to fish for your finishers. Wind Bauble can only draw a card versing Wind, which is great in the starter kit matchups, but not so great when you want to use this deck against anyone. Sneak Peek, we swap this card out for a Grand Crusader ring. Crystal of Empowerment, you bring this out when you need that bit extra to finish your opponent, and as it raises your level by 2, or it's pretty good to bring out when you have a couple of Careful Studies in your hand and you're not at a level 8 to play them for free. Tome of Knowledge is a good target for your floating memory, as Rye tends to use arcane cards to banish to level up, so you usually have floating memory available. It has a static ability of adding 1 level, and in times of need can be banished to do the best thing in a card game, draw a card. As a mage, you run pretty light on allies, but the ones you do have all have a role to play. Library Witch and Barrier Servant soak up aggro and preserve your life total. Barrier Servant, its added ability of removing 2 counters to negate damage, can be vital in matches into anything outside the mirror. So in these matchups, it's handy to hold on some counters and slap a servant on the board and to keep it there for a while. Magus Disciple goes under the radar, helping you gain a level for your efficiency spells, but your more aware opponents will probably kill, which is fine as it cycles itself on death. Dungeon Guides are great to save a card when leveling up to level 3 and helps you control getting arcane cards into banishment. Passion Shooter is a good early game play, as it's likely to not be attacked but loses value the later the game goes on. And finally, Blitz Mage is great in games where you want to be more aggressive in the early to mid game. Your skills and spells are Mage's bread and butter in the majority of your deck. Starting off with the normal element, all of them are better plays the higher the level you are. Careful Study, as long as it's played at level Rye 2, generates 6 enlightenment counters, and at level 8 it's a +1 card, as it's free to cast. Preemptive Mana, similar to Careful Study, needs to be played at a higher level to maximize its effect, and at a minimum will look to play unless at level 3 or higher. Sky of the Skies, to be fair, can be played earlier, but you just get so much out of it when you can glimpse 5, 6 or 7 or more cards and really set up the top of your deck. Now getting into the fire cards, we'll begin with Creative Shock, which is an awesome card, lets you cycle, and there's Rye, you get the class bonus of being able to ping for 2 damage. Fireball is your win con, and as it deals 1+ level damage, you can regularly send this in for 10+. And as you're a mage, it only costs 2 to cast, which is bonkers. Focus Flame, usually due to class bonus, will only cost 1 and kills an ally for 4, which is very good into Wind and Water, as they have quite a few annoying allies with 4 health. So prioritize this removal for those allies. Ignite the Soul is great to be banished with Creative Shock, as it fuels floating memory and turns the 1 damage into 2. but also good in hands as if you are versing another Rye or Water deck, they try to use a spell that stops your next damage. So if you're attacking with Arcane Blast for 11, they could play Water Barrier, which stops it to 1. However, as Ignite the Soul is a fast spell, you can wait for the Water Barrier to resolve, then play Ignite the Soul. So when the Arcane Blast comes in, it still hits for 11. Purging Flames is a board wipe, and depending on how you set up, can usually be played for free. Now the final group of cards to discuss are the Arcane cards, which do two things well: push a lot of damage and draw a bunch of cards. Anger Disguise is a better board wipe than Purging the Flames, but has a set cost, but dealing 4 damage to kill whatever the opponent has on board. Arcane Blast costs 11 to do 11 damage, but cost 1 per less per level. So you usually cast this for free, just remember to cast this first as it's a slow spell. Arcane Disposition costs 3 and draws 3 cards, which is magic. And when you get to level 3 right, you tend to be low on cards, so this replenishes your hand. But please note it has a drawback that at the end of turn you have to discard all your cards to the graveyard. So make sure that you sequence correctly and you have nothing in hand at the end of turn. Arcane Sight is a cantrip with the added advantage of gaining a level, so it's good to pair when you are trying to finish your opponent by reducing the cost of Arcane Blast and powering up your Fireball. While Power Overwhelming turns enlightenment counters into levels for a turn and pairs nicely with the last card, Spell Shield Arcane. This card turns damage about to be dealt into counters, and in the mirror this can turn an Arcane Blast of 11 damage into 11 enlightenment counters and subsequent 11 levels, so your Fireball could be coming in for an obscene amount of damage. So apart from changing the ratios, the only cards from the main deck I've cut are the Impassioned Shooter, as the hoops to jump to gain a level from this card make it too inconsistent, and Period to Mana as it feels a bit slow in the current deck. The main changes have been cutting the following Regalia: Scepter, Limiter, Bauble, Amulet and the Stone, as they're just better options out there. I've also focused on Regalia for this upgrade guide, as it provides better bang for buck and these can be transitioned into other decks outside of Rye. So what have I brought in? Cremation Ritual was brought in, as into other mages, if you've pried a Library Witch early, it just sits on the board. So this helps get rid of it for a card draw, and even against other decks, it's just great to cycle through the deck. Because you play it on the Library Witch and you draw 3 cards. The one Arcane card I bring in is Reckless Conversion, as this helps get Arcane cards into your banishment if you've struggled early on. The main changes come in the form of the Regalia. Orbit of Regret is probably the best Regalia in the game, as it allows early mulligans, while the Grand Crusader Ring is just unconditional card draw. Chalice of Blood is a great late game play, and easier to pull off than you think, as most opponents don't play around it and leave you on 20 to 24 life. Tome of Sacred Lightning costs nothing to play as long as you have Tome of Knowledge out. Its ability to cycle a card from memory is very strong, not only fueling your Arcane banishment and overall level, but it also gains you a card to play another action. Finally, the Cursed Sword is pretty meta dependent and might not be good in all matchups, but into certain decks that bounce Regalia in and out, it pushes a fair bit of damage that adds up quickly. Also, just want to give a shout out that the upgrader list can be found in the description below. And now let me get into the playstyle of this deck. Essentially, you need to banish Arcane cards when leveling up to fuel your late game. Rye needs to be around level 6, 7, but preferably 8 when it enters level 3, so that your efficiency cards cost nothing to play. You have to note that people will keep their shields up, so you need to keep burn spells for these matches. To the mirror and water matches, when you want to play your fireballs or your Arcane Blast, keep an Ignite the Soul, just in case they play something. Also into the wind matches, if they play Veiling Breeze, you want to have additional fireballs to play it on top of that Veiling Breeze, so that those fireballs get in, where your first spell then gets reduced damage from the Veiling Breeze. So it's a bit of cat and mouse in these matchups. And also against aggro list, interceptors are crucial early, and you want to keep those counters on Rye to make sure that your Barrier Servant can survive a few attacks. Alright, let's now get into some gameplay. Enjoy. Okay, so the game begins and I get to go first. This is a terrible opening hand, as I have no Arcane, so I'm just looking to get a Library Witch out just to absorb some aggro early. I see the opponent is playing water, which is kind of a good sign for me, because it just means it's a solid deck as well, so it allows me to Orbit Regret and hopefully try find some arcane cards. Turn 2, I draw a Creative Shock, which is good. And then there, I can see that I've got 2 arcane cards. I'll decide to do nothing that turn because they didn't have a board state, keep the Library Witch out. I could have played the Creative Shock, but then I had a 50% chance of discarding an arcane, and I just don't want that. I want to guarantee arcane into the bin. Again, this person plays Chilling Touch, which isn't great. So I play the Creative Shock this time. This time level up. So I played the Creative Shock, and then the turn got lucky. This for the arcane. Next turn I play a Blitz Mage. Just to put some early pressure. They level up to level 2 now. Allows them to draw a card. They've got a pretty big hand. Probably still got a couple of arcane in there now. And I've got the Library Witch, so they really haven't attacked me yet. Kills the Library Witch, lets me draw a card. I don't have that much arcane, so I'm hoping I'll get lucky. I'll lose one there, but I've got... So I get some arcane in, but not enough. So now I'm level 2. I see 3 arcane cards there, which is perfect. So play Dungeon Guide because now I've guaranteed another 2 in the bin. And now I'm level 3. And you're like, I've got no cards, and it looks bad. But I'm essentially level 7 now. So 1 card there to play the Careful Study. Now they've also gone up to level 3. They show me the Carnarvon, so I know there's Insouls coming, so I need to be careful of that. They take me for 1. And then with the sword, play Ignite the Soul on their turn just so I can get a counter on their turn. I use it then to draw a card. Get the Grand Crusader Ring because at this point now I'm just trying to actually I've got Tome of Knowledge there just to make sure I was level 8, so if I've got any spells. Now I'm just trying to stay at level 8 because I've got the Tome of Knowledge. I was able to bring out the UR book, so Sacred Tome of Lightning. Play Arcane Disposition, draws me 3, get another Arcane Disposition. So at the moment I'm going to lose a card here, so what I've decided to do, because I don't want to lose both Arcane Blast, is I use the Tome Sacrifice to banish a card. Don't get a arcane card in the bin, but I am able to play an Arcane Blast and not lose any of my cards and keep the additional Arcane Blast. So at the moment I'm level 8, and you can see how quick I went from having no cards in hand to having a full grip. And at this point my opponent there, I guess, only plays Ensoul, but they've had to lose a couple of cards now to get to level 3. Seeing as he attacks, I don't think he has Ensoul. I just like to get the Grand Crusader Ring just to draw an additional card. Now looking at my hand, I've only got the 1 Arcane Blast, so I can't kill him, so now it's just looking at cycling more cards. Play the Ignite Soul, get the counter, use the Tome to banish, so now I've guaranteed another Arcane card in there, so I'm level 9. Play Arcane Sight, goes to level 10. Play Creative Shock, banish, can do 2, and now I've got a Fireball and an Arcane Blast in hand. Always play the Arcane Blast first because it's slow, and as you can see, he plays a spell and then I play the Fireball over the top. I did my math wrong here. I thought I had him dead, but I was too short. Played an Arcane Sight just to try to get the additional level, but did my math wrong. So he heals, but then I've still got the Arcane Blast on the stack. So well and truly overkill, and that's that game. Okay, so that's my Rye upgrade video. If you've enjoyed that video, please consider subscribing and liking for more. As always, if you want to discuss anything Grand Archive, come find me in the Discord. Cheers.